Hello and welcome to Updog Sports Talk. If you are just checking us out for the first time, our mission here at Updog Sports Talk is to provide honest, fan-focused coverage that spotlights the teams, the athletes, and communities that are often overlooked by mainstream sports media. We do this because your team has a story worth telling. And today, our story takes us down, continuing our conference preview series, takes us to the Southland Conference. This is a conference that is very regional, very exciting. So very excited to get into each of the teams. Just kind of a quick overview of what this preview series looks like. If you haven't checked out the other episodes, we look at each team. So every team gets their moment to shine. You get to hear about your team, your alma mater, all of that on this show. We'll look at what reasons to be excited about each team, what reasons for concern there may be, and then also just what success looks like this year for them. So very excited for that. And yeah, we'll kind of go right into it now with the first team, the East Texas A&M Lions, formerly known as Texas A&M Commerce. This is a program that has moved up to the FCS level recently. So they're going to be looking for they're kind of working to establish themselves a little bit. I think this is a team that really they have a lot of talented pieces on this roster. I think the secondary looks really good. There's some really good players. There's some really good pieces all around. And so really there's some individual guys that are great reasons to be excited about this team. And I'm excited because they're going to get the opportunity to shine. They got the FCS kickoff against Mercer on, I think it's going to be on one of the top ESPN networks, so not ESPN itself. And that'll be week 0, Saturday. Make sure you check that game out. But I think it's going to be a nice moment for those players to kind of shine a little bit. But I think the biggest concern, this is still a recent call up, and they just lack the size they need, interior muscle, all of that to kind of compete with the upper level teams at this moment. I think you've got a situation where you've got a lot of good parts, but you don't have the full sum of the parts just yet. But I think in general, you're going to continue to see a lot of encouraging signs from this program. I think in terms of success, it looks like kind of getting a few more wins, getting closer to that 500 mark. And I think actually most importantly, that season opener, got to be competitive there. You're going up against a new coaching staff at Mercer, a very good coaching staff. So, this is easier said than done. But I think getting that major opportunity, this is one of the rare opportunities that this program gets to get in front of a national audience. So I think they need to be competitive in that game, at least in the first half. Keep everyone kind of tuned in for a half, get people to get to know your program more. And I think that sets a good tone for the rest of the year. Sure, I think the depth of the depth charts and a more physical style for Mercer will eventually wear them down. But if you're competitive for a half, maybe you can lead at halftime or something, I think you can capture a lot of intrigue from around the nation. People get to learn more about your program in the process. So I think that's going to be the huge key for them. It's just to kind of continue to make progress to being competitive at this level and winning games. Because that's definitely not easy to do. So that's what I see for the Lions of East Texas A&M. Next, we go to the Houston Christian Huskies, HCU for short. They are a team that is kind of trying to work their way through things a little bit. They have a pretty good, aggressive linebacker group and really even some guys in the secondary that are pretty good. I think you got a defense that's going to give people a hard time. But ultimately for Houston Christian, I think it was very funny because their most successful season was 2020, where they had an explosive offense all around with Zach Kitley as their offensive coordinator. But then he left, and now you look at a few years later, and their offense just they can't find the playmakers, the receivers, get easy scores, and ultimately, if they can't move the ball consistently, if they get behind the chains, you see the offense kind of struggle to score a little bit. So that's kind of the area to watch out for there. But I think success for them just kind of looks like getting a few more wins under their belt, continuing to try to move forward in the conference. And yeah, I think that could be the big key for them and just maybe getting closer to that 500 mark to show that they can be competitive here in the future. So that's what you want to see there. Next, we get to Incarnate Word, UIW. This program really dominated the Southland for several years now and just really had a constant churn of young head coaches getting their first opportunity, doing very well, and having exciting offenses. They made it to the semifinals of the FCS playoffs at one point. Like, this program has been really strong. And then last year, it all kind of collapsed a little bit. And this is after, at one point, before the spring portal opened, we were looking at a team that was a championship contender. And that was because of lots of returning talent at running back, receiver, all of that. They had to hit the portal for a quarterback, but the options were promising. And then, all of a sudden you get like into January, offensive coordinator gets a job on the Las Vegas Raiders staff. He's gone, and then as a result of him being gone, spring portal comes around. All of a sudden, players are more willing to listen to offers, and all of a sudden you lose a few more pieces. The quarterback situation ends up unstable because, offensive coordinator left right when they were still in the thick of recruiting these guys and ended up not getting them. I left that in flux, and just really that's what happened last year. You saw a lot of fluctuation that led to a collapse, but now getting to this year, I think we're going to see them get back to playing UIW football again. I really like the pieces they brought in on offense. I think they're going to have a good quarterback this year. I think the running game's going to be better, and you're going to see those talented receivers that you're used to seeing again. So I think this offense is going to be a blast to watch. But you've kind of got some guys on the defense as well. Brendan Bradshaw in particular in the secondary, kind of helping to replenish this roster a little bit and get this team back towards contention again. So I think that will be kind of the interesting thing to watch this team. Ultimately, still, yes, the portal options look good, but these pieces need to come together very well. We saw what can happen if they don't last year, so kind of working their way back up to that, and that way they can get back to contention. So I think success looks like at least making it back to the FCS playoffs, but I think with the expectations this program carries, I think they're going to be looking to be right back in the mix of the Southland race this year. So that's going to be the thing to watch. But I think in general, though, you go 8-4, you make the FCS playoffs. I think people will be very happy with that, and there's a good feeling about the direction of the program when that happens. So I think that looks good for them. Next, we get to Lamar, the Cardinals. They had a huge breakout year last year, and really, it's been really cool to see in general. Like, this athletics department has been growing rapidly. Like, they have made all the right moves in Beaumont, Texas to be very competitive. And we're seeing that at all levels. I mean, football made the FCS playoffs. Their baseball team made the baseball tournament there. So you're looking at a program that's on the rise right now. They just opened a new locker room that looks really nice. There's a lot to love about the future of Lamar football. And I feel like last year was kind of the breakout year, but you're going to see Lamar continue to be a top contender in this conference moving forward. That's always a team you got to watch a little bit. Now you've got a defense that's going to be really good. Their defense is once again going to be a problem for teams, and I think you're going to see it's going to be tough to score against Lamar for sure. The big question is going to be, yes, the defensive front looks really good, but in the secondary, you kind of lost some leadership. Make sure you replace those. But ultimately, I think you need to see the offense kind of take a step forward a little bit. They were okay. They did enough to win close games, but now you need to see the offense kind of score more consistently. You're not going to be able to win those margins anymore because, and I know this is kind of a funny small piece here, but, kicker Ben Woodard was really, really good. He was a weapon. I mean, he hit a 57-yarder to beat UTRGV last year. So, losing someone like that can score from a long ways, like that is a way that they won some close games that is gone now. So that's going to be a huge key as well. So the offense needs to take that step forward in order for Lamar to remain in the Southland race, try to win the South even. If this kind of gets their goals a little bit, I think in general, just kind of be in that Southland title contention, maybe take it a step further and win the conference this year. And I think in terms of the playoffs, you'll want to take a step forward. So last year they made it. That was really awesome for them. Now the next step is to get back to the playoffs and win a game. That is going to be the next goal for them. So I think it's a really exciting time at Beaumont, Texas for this program, and I'm very excited to see what their future looks like. Next, we get to McNeese, and this is the program that has a lot of resources in this conference. For a little bit there, that wasn't always the case, but lately there's been a nice, really ignited push there. I think McNeese is going to be a program that continues to rise. Now, first of all, we're seeing a rise in the basketball side first. I mean, they are a fantastic program over there, but football was successful first. Like, this used to be a team that was a problem for FBS opponents. And actually, their head coach, Matt Viator, was previously with the program before when they beat South Florida 53-21. So, yeah, he coached his team up to be good one time, and I think he could do it again. I think this team is continuing to make steps in the right direction. It's a little bit of a building job, but I think definitely McNeese is going to be continuing to take the step forward. But of course, the biggest challenge to doing that is always the trenches. The trenches are the hardest area to build. The interior McNeese's offensive line and really even defensive line, like just kind of a little unproven at this point. They need to be able to build it up a little bit to compete with the rest of the conference. So I think that's going to be the big key there. But success for them, I would say is the program that wants to get back to the playoffs. If you have a 7-5 season, you just barely miss out on making the playoffs. I don't think the pitchfork's going to come out or anything. Like, I don't think there's going to be a huge problem there. I think that's still positive momentum. But I think internally this program probably wants to get themselves back into the playoffs, back to at least being a factor in this conference title race again. And I think they're working their way there. So that'll be very exciting to see. Yeah, I think McNeese is going to be a very intriguing team to watch. Now, next we get to Nichols. And last year, Nichols actually had a really cool moment to start the year, week 0. They were on a linear TV, beat UIW in what seemed like a huge upset at the time. That was a really big moment for them. And they really started out the year pretty strong. Like, the next week, they went up against Troy and battled them for a half as well. Then things kind of worn off. They got kind of worn down a little bit and dropped off a bit. But I think you saw right away like what this new coaching staff is going to do here. This is going to be a team that's going to be stronger up front. They bother teams with their trenches. They're going to be a run first team, and yeah, they have a very strong run game. So it's a pretty interesting offense to watch in that regard. But the problem for them is they lack a true passing game at this point. The passing game is not dynamic at this point. You cannot get easy scores from throwing the ball. They have to really work their way down the field a little bit. So that's going to be the next thing to work on. And I think in general, success for them looks like getting back to a 500 record, maybe even 7-5. I think you get back to that, and I think that's going to be really encouraging for them. But I can't rule out them going 8-4 and making the playoffs as well. I think that's always a possibility if they can kind of figure out at least a little progression of this past game. Next, we get to Northwestern State. The fact that this program is even around, there was major controversy a few years back, and that really tore things down to the studs. They were struggling for very long. They've been struggling for the last several years. They had that moment where South Alabama put up like 80 something on them. I think they may have put up 90 in that game. But Northwestern State is kind of working their way back up a little bit from that point. So you understand where they're coming from at this point. This is still a team that has, they're. I think the coaching staff is doing a pretty good job. They are really an aggressive, high risk, high reward team. You're gonna see them. They know they had nothing to lose, and you're going to see them attack aggressively as a result of that. You're not going to just be able to walk in and knock them off pretty easily. They're going to at least make you work for it. So that being said, of course, it's still really difficult. They've done a good job finding good pieces. Some new good pieces will emerge again, but each year, kind of trying to keep those pieces around has proven to be a challenge for them. So for Northwestern State, I would say in general, last year they opened with a win over Alcorn State, and that was a huge moment for them. I think this year you want to see them take it a step further, get a second win, maybe even finish above last in the conference, and you're looking a lot better. You're taking it. There's not going to be like you're not gonna this is not one that you're gonna overhaul overnight and all of a sudden start winning games. Like this is going to be small steps at a time. And so I think small steps at a time looks like even multiple wins will look good. But the huger positive would be if they can win some conference games, get out of last place in the conference. I think that's looking pretty encouraging. Now we get to the Southeastern Lions. They made the playoffs last year, had a very solid team, and they're looking to get back there again. Very steady coaching staff. I'm especially excited for the offensive coordinator they brought in. He was the running backs coach of Louisiana, really developed really good backs there. So, and this is already a team that ran the ball pretty well. You're going to see the run game continue to improve. The defense has to replace Caleb Proctor. He was just drafted to the NFL, the highest draft pick out of FCS, so Southeastern has a little bit of bragging rights there. But even with him gone, this defense still has some studs all around. The defense is going to be really good. The big question is just, can they find any juice out of the passing game? I think last year getting completions was difficult. Most of the time those completions required very short passes or screens. So they need to be able to throw the ball better this year. That's going to be the big area of upgrade because, you can get by a lot on tough defense, but ultimately when it came to the playoffs, even though they had Illinois State at home, they fell apart in that game because they just could not, Illinois State was tough enough to prevent them from running the ball, and there was no plan B because they couldn't throw it. So that's going to be the huge key to take that next step. And I think that next step looks like for Southeastern. I think they're going to be looking to win the conference this year. At least being in Southland title contention will be good. But I think they could they're going to be hoping to win the conference and make the playoffs again and win a game this time. I think that's going to be what success looks like. Not that there's going to, if they make it, even though the Southeastern fans in Hammond, Louisiana, they are very passionate, but I think they'll still be happy if they had a similar year where they made the playoffs again. But ultimately, you always want to be moving forward, not backwards. So that's why I feel like success looks like going a step further and winning a playoff game. But I think being in that playoff race is still really good for them. So that gets us to Stephen F. Austin. If you are very new to this conference and learning about it for the first time, the F stands for Fuller. There's your fun fact of the day. Stephen F. Austin is on the rise a little bit. They had a really, really good team last year. They were exciting. They challenged Montana State they kind of backfired on themselves a lot. If it wasn't for the mistakes, I think they very well could have been pretty competitive with Montana State and Bozeman. But made the quarterfinals. I think that was a huge step. Now as the defending conference champions, I think they come into the season with a lot of confidence. They have a lot of portal pieces, but they're really talented portal pieces. And head coach Colby Carthel is a really good coach. So you know that this team is going to be very good under his watch. But still that portal area is a little bit of a concern for me. Last year was a very senior-heavy group. There was a lot of seniors that helped allow for that run. Now you've got a lot of new guys trying to keep that going. Can they keep that going? That is going to be the big question. But still the expectation is to defend that conference title. So success for them, that's what it looks like. It looks like defending that conference title, winning it again. I think with all the turnover, I wouldn't say making it further than the quarterfinals, but getting back to the quarterfinals look good. So that's what I like to see from them. Win a game in the playoffs, and you're looking pretty good. But even if they make the playoffs, even if they don't win the conference, I think if you at least go in for and reach the playoffs, I think that still looks pretty successful for them. So, but definitely the Lumberjacks are going to be a fun team to watch. And then we get to the UTRGV Vaqueros, the newcomer. They started their football program last year and won 9 games right off the bat. They had the best debut season in FCS history last year. It is a program that has a lot of resources at their disposal. The Valley is so excited to have a college football team. People did not realize that this is a very heavily populated area that loves sports, but they did not have their home sports team until now. Now with UTRGV, I think there's going to be a lot of excitement. Travis Bush is a really good head coach. Last year was a completely new team, and they managed to be competitive. The only teams they lost to were the ones that went to the playoffs. And, this is still a roster. It's a collection of some of the best in the Rio Grande Valley. I think there's a lot of pride in that. That's why their home crowds are very electric. They actually had to play a lot of the tough teams, all those playoff teams, on the road last year. They went undefeated at home. Now, you get those top competitors all at home. They have to come to the Valley. So that's going to be really interesting. And, you look around this roster, there's some really good, exciting pieces. Like the offensive line, the lines hold up a lot better than what you would have expected from a startup. That was really impressive. And you got some really good pieces on that defense. I mean, all levels of the defense have some excellent players. This is one of the first previews that we wrote off this year. So if you want to really go more in depth on who these guys are, who they have, be sure to check that out on our Substack. But this is going to be a really, really good team again. And I think there's just a lot of excitement down the Rio Grande Valley. But the biggest challenge for them is while they have a lot of top-tier starters, they're going to be dealing with a tougher schedule this year. They have their first FBS opponent. They also have a road game at Central Arkansas on the purple and gray turf. So, last year they kind of got to, keep guys rested a little bit early on because, it's hard to schedule games in your startup. So they played a lot of lower division teams. But now this year, it's going to be tough competition pretty much week in and week out. So that definitely will test their depth a little bit. They're going to need some young guys to come in and contribute to take the pressure off the starters. So, and while getting to that 9-win level, 9 wins with some lower division teams. So really, in terms of the playoff community, they were probably looking at this more like a 6-3 team. But getting from on the bubble to that next step to making the playoffs, contending for a Southland title, that is the more difficult jump. There is a huge gap there, and of course, the teams you're going against are a lot better at that point. So that's always the huge challenge. So that'll be their big challenge this year, and I think success for the Vaqueros looks like making their first appearance in the FCS playoffs. I think getting there would look really good, but certainly this is a team with the upside to contend for a conference title, to win games in the playoffs. I feel like with the resources they have, and the support they have, the excitement down the valley, you're looking at a program that's going to be competing for FCS titles sooner rather than later. But there is still going to be, a work in progress to get there. You got to get there. You got to walk before you run, as they say. But definitely a lot of excitement for this program. So that gets us to the conference picks. I think for my sleeper pick, now I'm pretty torn on this because I think technically UIW is considered a sleeper because they're picked 5th in the conference and coming off a rough year. I think they're going to jump right into conference title contention. But at the same time, I'm going to go with, I think McNeese is not being talked about a whole lot. So I'm going to go with McNeese on this one as my true sleeper. I think that they'll take a huge step forward also. So that's going to be my team to watch. And then my conference title pick, I am going to go with Southeastern. I think they'll improve an offense this year. Defense will still be strong. And there's just a lot I like about this team. I think Southeastern will end up winning the Southland this year, but it's going to be a competitive race. I mean, there are 5 teams I see that could possibly win it. UIW, Lamar, Southeastern, Stephen F. Austin, and UTRGV. My 5 top contenders, and then you have McNeese in there as a top contender as well. So there's going to be it's going to be a very competitive race. And this conference is just so much fun to talk about because they are intensely regional. Like that is how the Southland kind of went on the rise a little bit, was just fully embracing regional football again. And really just all these teams in Louisiana and Texas, every single game feels heated and more important because their fans are going to interact with the alma mater of the other fans. Like you've got Lamar versus McNeese, like each of them just ran the Louisiana-Texas border right across from each other. You've got Stephen F. Austin and a lot of the teams here, like they play A&M Commerce. East Texas A&M is a rival, kind of. Houston Christian's kind of regional a little bit. Northwestern State, probably more of a basketball rivalry because of the state of their football program, but still, you got a lot of really good, interesting football in this conference. So make sure, this is kind of your message here, to make sure you watch this conference this year because you'll enjoy it. I mean, this is college football at its finest here. This is what college football is all about, is regional games. So, and this conference brings it. Thank you for tuning in. This was another episode. I know we have, we covered a lot of teams at a high level tonight. You've got Stephen F. Austin, UTRGV, Southeastern, Lamar. I actually have more in-depth previews of those 4 on our Substack. So if you really want to go deeper on some of these teams, you got the opportunity to do that by checking that out. Be sure to like, subscribe, and if you're listening to this in podcast format, please be sure to leave a review. All of it helps us to bring more coverage to these programs that don't get enough of it but deserve it. Thank you for tuning in.